bring in our friend Chris Carter of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. You were on the way here, Chris. Have you arrived? Has the snow slowed you? Where are you at right now?
Well, we are in Syracuse now. We're getting close to our ultimate destination here. I had to pick up our credentials from the university, and now we're working our way through. The snow was kind of rough. We got stuck behind a few traffic jams of people not knowing how to drive up a hill while it's snowing, but we're getting there.
All right. That's disconcerting to hear in Syracuse. We should all know how to do that. I'm always worried when people in Syracuse don't know how to drive in the snow. That worries me. All right. Dinner.
I feel like you guys should know this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I can understand when, the southern half of the league doesn't know how to pull that off, but like us, the old Big East teams need to know how to drive in the snow around here. All right, dinner plans tonight? What are you doing here in the Salt City when you're out and about tonight?
We're still checking it out. I think there was someone told us to go to Armory Square or something like that.
Okay.
We're looking. We've been taking suggestions from the locals as we've run into them.
Okay, I can tell you, I am sitting at the tail end of Armory Square right now. You'll have plenty of options if you come down and find a spot and wander around. You'll have plenty of options for your evening. All right, we got Chris Carter, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, with us. All right, what's going on with Pitt? Is it as simple here in this 4-game losing streak as this is about as hard of a stretch of 4 games as one could have played in the league with Duke and and Clemson, and you look at Louisville in there, or do you read something more into what's happened here the last couple of weeks?
I mean, they've surely played some really good competition. There's been a lot of quad one losses, but at the same time, Pitt hasn't been able to do what it wants to do, what it aims to do with the way it's built its team. For example, you look at how the Panthers want to play. They want to run this offense through their guards, Jalen Lowe, Ishmael Leggett, Damian Dunn. Drive, attack, create off of that. Force teams to have to collapse on you, and as soon as they do, kick it to the open man, hit a 3. But teams have been doing a really good job at denying the driving lanes, and to me, that has to be Syracuse's number one priority. You do everything to keep Pitt's guards from driving in and creating terror inside the lanes. If they get to the paint against you guys, that's going to be a problem. So if I'm Syracuse, I'm telling my defense, and I know Syracuse defense has struggled, do everything that you can do there, because if you force Pitt to shoot from outside, you at least force them to have to show that they can shoot well in a game. And then if they're doing that, Syracuse has a better rebounding margin than Pitt right now on the season. That's where you can try to minimize the game, get Pitt into a rock fight, and then if you get hot in your shooting, you can make that a lot closer of a contest.
I think Syracuse fans may have just taken a big gulp there when you said that, because Syracuse's defense has not been able to stop what you've said basically all season long. And you look at Lowe and Leggett. Obviously, last year, Bub Carrington was there, who ended up being was he the last lottery pick? I think this year. Blake Hinson had a great season. How different has the transition been from Carrington and Hinson leading the way to this year with Lowe and Leggett?
So I think the biggest thing is that, like, Lowe, honestly, if you had talked to most people that covered the team last year, they felt Lowe was the better player by the end of last season than Carrington. It's just that Carrington's the better prospect because he's 6'5", and he has that frame that he can grow into, and he'll quickly transcend into the NBA. Lowe's 6'3". He's got a killer mentality to him, but I think he has to learn how to balance that with everyone around him. And there's no clear star shooter on the team like there was in Blake Hinson. Whereas, like, Blake Hinson was the guy, you got the ball to him, Blake Hinson was going to go off, and he could carry the team that way. Ishmael Leggett last year was the 6th man of the year in the ACC. Now he's your starting shooting guard. And I think one thing that they've struggled to do consistently is find the lineup that works for them that gets them into the flow of scoring at higher rates, quickly working, and also defending at the pace that they want to. Pitt, when it's at its best, its defensive rotation is impressive. It smothers you. It slows you down. It keeps you from getting into it. But, like, for example, last Saturday against Clemson went ballistic, beyond the three-point line in the first half. And Pitt's rotation just wasn't quick enough to get to the right spots to defend it. But in the second half, they adjusted to it. It made it a game and allowed them to start their comeback, but it was just too little too late. They ended up losing in overtime. So now you're sitting here, if you're Pitt, this is your chance to say, all right, we've had a week off. We've identified some of these issues, and throughout this losing streak, it's been different things. Against Duke, they didn't hit their open shots. Against Louisville, they got destroyed in the offensive rebounds. Against Florida State, I think that they got bullied out of their style away because Florida State was just really physical with them, and I think that knocked them off their game a little bit. I thought they brought a great great effort against Clemson, but Clemson's had Pitt and Jeff Capel's numbers for years, and when they were able to get that to overtime, that was great. Okay, great effort, but you still got to finish better. And I think this team needs to get into its flow. So I think that's the big thing right now. Leggett and Lowe are dangerous, but they need to balance it with the skills of Cam Corrin, who's one of the most efficient scorers in the ACC. When he gets the ball in the paint, he is dangerous, not because he's going to overpower you, but he is so good at finding that shot that he likes from close range. So if I'm Syracuse, keep the guards from penetrating and don't let them get the ball to Cam Corrin, because once he starts hitting from inside, it starts to open up other things.
Corrin he's so different than when you think about the back in the day Pitt centers, when you're thinking of Aaron Gray or DeJuan Blair, these just big bruiser types. How different of a vibe is that of what he's given to Pitt on the inside than what Cuse fans are used to over the years?
Well, I think it's just because Jeff Capel's needed to find something different, right? Pitt has been trying to find that center of his whole time there. They had John Hughley. Hughley never really manifested.
Yeah.
Last couple of years, it's been Federico, Fede was athletic and he was long, but he wasn't a scorer, and he can get rough and tough with you, but he wasn't going to bully you. And I think that's the thing is Cam Corrin's still not a bully, but what he does is he finds that touch to shoot. He can get a spot from 10 feet out and try to hit a shot that he likes against you, but he can also pivot and work inside on you. And I think that is a very unique thing in Pitt history. They haven't had too many bigs that are skilled scorers, more like powerful scorers. And, Aaron Gray and DeJuan Blair, they kind of identify that. You might think back to Zana or Terry Alette, guys who've been really physical. They kind of identify with that old Big East style of basketball. That's not who Cam Corrin is. But I think that's the thing is this Pitt team has to adjust to using that in the right ways, because when it clicks, him with Ishmael Leggett and Jalen Lowe, they can become a three-headed monster. And then you add in a guy like Zach Austin who can dunk, block shots, steal, hit three-pointers. Then they start to get into a flow. But I think that what Pitt had struggled to do during this 4-game losing streak, they have struggled to find that balance all throughout it to make it so that it's a free-flowing offense where everyone's kind of hitting and a defense can't centralize on one thing.
Yeah, like I say, if Corrin can step out just a little bit, not even to three, like that puts Eddie Lampkin in not necessarily his comfort zone on defense. So that is something big to watch out for in the game tomorrow. All right, Chris, Jeff Capel here. It's year 7, made the tournament a couple of years ago. You look at last year, you could easily argue they should have been in the dance last year when they had 22 wins and that road win at Duke and didn't get in. What's the general thoughts on Capel? Because it was slow starting there, though he had a big hole to dig out of before he got it going here the last couple of years.
Well, I think that from the reasonable parts of the fan base, first of all, you understand, Pittsburgh fans are miserable right now. Pirates stink. Penguins stink. Steelers started off great, fell off a cliff, so did Pitt football. So now Pitt basketball is getting the wrath as they're on a 4-game losing streak. So you're going to hear a lot more negativity right now. But I think there's a general acknowledgement that the first 4 years of Jeff Capel were all rebuilding years of the entire program. It was pre-NIL. It was in a time when Kevin Stallings ripped the program apart. He had to rebuild the entire culture, entire parts of the facilities for them so that players could even want to go and even stay at Pitt. He did that for the most part, and then he just needed to have veteran leaders that they could set a tone for the young recruits that he was bringing in that were highly recruited. And then once he got that, his first year when they were able to use NIL to go put some bets together for their young guys, that's what set the tone. That's what led to the Jamarius Burton team that made the tournament and won 2 games in the tournament. And then, like you said, last year that carried over. Blake Hinson was the leftover leader from that first team, and he set the tone for Jalen Lowe and Bub Carrington and those guys to come in. And now those guys are setting the tone this year. And I agree with you. Last year, I pointed it out, the ACC has been getting dogged when it comes to picks. In every other conference, if you get at least 21 wins on the season, you pretty much make the tournament every single time. In the ACC, you basically need 24 wins to guarantee you in. You can get in with 23 and 22, but it's a much tougher road to get there. So last year, you can say Pitt should have deserved their way in, but they made it their mantra: prove it. They have to prove it. They have it. They started off really well. They're really strong in the net because they've had a really good non-conference schedule. They won a tough game at Ohio State. They played Wisconsin tough. They've won some good games, and then, they beat West Virginia pretty soundly, and West Virginia's gone on to beat a lot of really good teams. So they're propped up by that. But if they lose to Syracuse, no knocking, Syracuse as a fan base, but right now, I think everyone got to acknowledge Syracuse is on the struggle bus right now. If they lose to Syracuse, a lot of that good faith is going to be gone, and that's why they need to bounce back right here. But as far as Jeff Capel, I think in the years that he has reasonably had a chance to make the tournament. He's been one of two, and you can argue that second one that he should have been in if it wasn't for the selection committee putting in a bad Virginia team that Pitt beat in their house and had a better record than last year. But this is a year where it's like, okay, you had last year where it was like you had two freshmen, being a big part of your team. Now this is the year you need to capitalize. So Pitt has to start the rise right here. If they lose this one, this will change a lot of tones, I think, on Jeff Capel. But I think that this is where he has to show, hey, I'm a very good coach. We put together a good team. This is going to be the culture of fight that you're going to see for them for the rest of the season.
Now, what's your sense of the league this year, Chris? I mean, last year I think Pitt especially got hurt by the perception that the league was down. When you look this year, it's like, well, the league might actually be down this year. What is your sense of the ACC as a whole this year?
I think the ACC is going to get, dogged, no matter what happens. Jeff Capel brought this up. Yes, they got destroyed in the SEC challenge this year, but in previous years, they've won those challenges, and it didn't make a difference. And I pointed this out in articles that I wrote at the after Selection Sunday last year, or even leading into it. I said, look at the ACC. The ACC in March Madness, they have the most wins, the highest win percentage, the most Sweet 16 teams, the most Elite 8 teams, and the most Final Four teams. And yet they're told, you're not good enough of a conference. And to me, it's about money. It's about TV deals. Because if you look at who the ACC pops on whenever it's like exclusive channel, it's the CW network. Whereas the SEC network, they're aligned with ESPN. Big Ten, they got Fox. There's bigger money behind these other conferences right now, and that's what the ACC is truly up against. So what you have to do is you have to prove everyone wrong. You have to go in and do it. So I think that it's a reality that no matter what happens, there's going to be ACC teams that just get dogged because they're not, people behind the decision-making aren't as behind the ACC, and everyone kind of recognizes that. So what you have to do is if you're ACC teams, if you're one of those bubble ACC teams that wins 22, 23-win games, you have to schedule hard, and you have to win those hard games, and you cannot lose to bad teams. Like last year, as for all the good things Pitt did, it lost to a really bad Missouri team at home. That loss, I think, was the thing that gave all the people that didn't believe in Pitt to be like, you know what? They don't deserve to be in because of that one loss. And so Pitt can't afford to have that, as can most of the ACC teams. And I think it's unfair, it's unbalanced, but I do think it's a reality that ACC teams have to embrace right now and try to overcome.
Wins on the CW don't count as much. I don't think. I think back to football season. Syracuse had that just complete implosion at Pittsburgh. Then their next three games were on the CW. It was like they'd vanished off the face of the earth before they reappeared to end the season. All right, Chris, we'll wrap up with this. How do you think it plays out tomorrow?
I think that Syracuse can come out and give Pitt a good fight. I think that there's still I think Pitt is a team that it's been a slow starter this season, and if Pitt starts slow, Syracuse has to jump on it. They have to hit. I know Syracuse hasn't shot well from three, but you got to find ways to score somehow. Get it to your shooters, get it to your scorers. If Pitt comes out sluggish on defense, you got to capitalize fast. But here's the thing: I think that even if they do, I think Pitt corrects the course a lot quicker in this game, and I think that their scorers get back to scoring and they find a rhythm. It's been they really found it against Clemson, and I think that Clemson is just a good team, and they cooled off in the final minute and a half that allowed Clemson to kind of force it to overtime, and then Clemson just hit one extra three-pointer that Pitt didn't in overtime. I think that this is a contested game into halftime, and then one thing that you see is Jalen Lowe, when he comes out of the locker room, whatever it is about him, he locks into some extra sense. I have seen at least 7 games this year where he'll come out, Pitt's in a fight at halftime, and then he'll just get a steal and then a quick score on the other side of things, and that's usually what sets the tone in the second half. I think that's kind of what happens. I say Pitt wins by 8 in this one. Not a blowout by any means, but I think that they find a way to pull away late, and then Syracuse can make it a little bit closer in the final minute.
Okay, low early in the second half. That'll be something big to keep an eye on tomorrow. All right, Chris, always great to chat. Appreciate the time. Enjoy it here in the Cuse, and thanks so much for the insight.
Thanks for having me.
All right, there he is, our guy Chris Carter from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And he actually predicted a closer final score than I did. So there we are. We'll see how it goes tomorrow. Pitt badly needs a win to kind of get back on track. Obviously, the Orange badly need a win just for the semblance of anything right now to get back to 500 at this point. All right, we'll take a break. We'll get Mike in here. 4-on-1 NFL whip around. There's only 3 NFL games left. It's hard to whip around when there's only 2 games this weekend. We'll figure it out. That's next. Q Sports Talk, ESPN Radio.